any of you happen to know a man by the name of Mainwaring who is interested in mines out here?" "Mainwaring?" answered one of the group. "There's a man by that name has been around here off and on for the last 2 or 3 months, but I didn't know he was interested in mines to any extent, though he seems to have plenty of money." "I think that is the man I have in mind. Will you describe him?" "Well, he's tall, about middle age, rather gray, wears blue glasses, and never has anything to say to anybody. A queer sort of fellow." Mr. Johnson nodded, but before he could reply, another in the group remarked, "Oh, that's the fellow you mean, is it? I've seen him at the Royal Café for the last 6 weeks, and in all that time he's never exchanged a dozen words with anybody, till here, the other night, that diamond Dutchman of yours," addressing the proprietor of the Clifton, "came waltzing in there, and I'll be hanged if the two didn't get as confidential over their dinner as 2 old women over a cup of tea." Mr. Johnson turned towards the proprietor with a quiet smile. "The diamond Dutchman. Is he a guest of your house?" "Mr. Rosenbaum?" "Yes. Do you know him?" "Not by name, but I think I have seen the gentleman on my travels. Engaged in the jewelry business, isn't he? And carries his advertisements on his shirt front and fingers?" "That's the man," the proprietor replied, amid a general laugh. "Why, he's all right, isn't he?" "All right for aught that I know, sir. I haven't the pleasure of the gentleman's acquaintance, though possibly I may have if we both remain here long enough," and he carelessly turned the subject of conversation. A little later, as Mr. Johnson left the Clifton, he soliloquized, "Well, if I haven't exactly killed 2 birds with one stone, I think I've snared 2 birds in one trap. Since coming west I haven't located one without seeing or hearing the other. It's my belief they're pals, and if I can pull in the pair, so much the better." The following evening found Mr. Johnson in the vicinity of the Royal Café. Having discovered a small newsstand opposite, he strolled in thither, and buying a couple of papers, seated himself in a quiet corner, prepared to make observations. He had not waited long when Mr. Mainwaring made his appearance, and after pausing a moment to look up and down the street, entered the restaurant. He had been seated but a moment when Mr. Rosenbaum appeared, crossing the street, having evidently left the jeweller's store, and also entered the café. The 2 men shook hands and immediately withdrew to one of the private boxes. Mr. Johnson had visited the Royal Café earlier in the day, and made himself familiar with its interior arrangement. Knowing the box just taken to be No. 3, and that No. 4 directly opposite was unoccupied, he at once proceeded across the street to the restaurant. Stopping at the cashier's desk, he said in a low tone, "I expect some friends later, and don't wish to be disturbed till they come, understand?" The man nodded, and Mr. Johnson passed on noiselessly into No. 4. Meanwhile, the occupants of No. 3, having received their orders, dismissed the waiter, with the information that when they needed his services they would ring for him. Mr. Mainwaring was visibly excited, so much so that his dinner remained almost untasted, and the other, observing his evident agitation, pushed aside his own plate, and folding his arms upon the table, inquired indifferently, "Well, my dear sir, what was your friend's decision?" For reply, the other drew from his pocket a small case, which he silently handed across the table. Mr. Rosenbaum opened it, disclosing as he did so a pair of diamonds of moderate size, but of unusual brilliancy, and perfectly matched. He examined them silently, scrutinizing them closely, while his face indicated considerable dissatisfaction. "What does your friend expect for these?" he asked at length. "What will you give for them?" was the counter question. "I do not care to set a price on them, for I do not want them," he replied rather shortly. "I think," said Mr. Mainwaring, "that my friend would dispose of them at a reasonable figure, as he is at present in need of ready cash with which to consummate an important mining negotiation." After considerable fencing and parrying, Mr. Rosenbaum made an offer for the gems, to which Mr. Mainwaring demurred. "Show me a higher class of gems and I will offer you a better price," said Mr. Rosenbaum, finally seeming to grow impatient. "Show me one like this, for instance, and I will offer you a small fortune." And opening a case which he had quickly drawn from his pocket, he took from it an enormous diamond, beside whose dazzling brilliancy the pair of gems under consideration seemed suddenly to grow dim and lustreless. He held it up, and 1,000 rays of prismatic light flashed in as many different directions. "What do you think of that, my dear sir? When I can find a match for that magnificent stone, we can fill an order which we have held for more than 12 months from the royal house in Germany. But where will I find it?" Twirling the gem carelessly between his thumb and finger, he watched the face of his companion, and saw it change to a deathly pallor. "May I see that for one moment?" he asked, and his voice sounded unnatural and constrained, while the hand which he extended across the table trembled visibly. "Most certainly, sir," Mr. Rosenbaum replied, and in compliance with the request, handed to Mr. Mannering the gem which the latter had himself disposed of less than 3 months before in one of the large western cities. Nothing could escape the piercing eyes now fastened upon that face with its strange pallor, its swiftly changing expression. Unconscious of this scrutiny, Mr. Mannering regarded the gem silently, then removed his glasses for a closer inspection. Having satisfied his curiosity, he returned the stone to Mr. Rosenbaum, and as he did so, found the eyes of the latter fixed not upon the gem, but upon his own face. Something in their glance seemed to disconcert him for an instant, but he quickly recovered himself, and replacing the colored glasses, remarked with a forced composure, "That is a magnificent stone. May I ask when and where you found it?" "I picked it up in one of your cities, some 3 months ago, maybe, more or less." "You bought it in this country, then. Why may you not expect to match it here?" "Simply on the theory, my dear sir, that the lightning never strikes twice in the same place." "Well, sir," said Mr. Mannering calmly, "I will show you a stone so perfect a match for that, you yourself could not distinguish between the two." "You have such a diamond?" Mr. Rosenbaum exclaimed. "Why, then, are you wasting time with these?" And he pushed the smaller diamonds from him with a gesture of contempt. "Why did you not produce it in the first place?" "Because," replied Mr. Mannering, his composure now fully restored, "I do not propose to produce it until I know somewhere near what you will give for it." "My dear sir," Mr. Rosenbaum's tones became eager, "as I have already told you, if I can match this stone," placing it on the table between them, "I will pay you a small fortune. Money would be no object. You could have your own price." Without further words, Mr. Mannering drew forth a small package, which he carefully opened, and taking therefrom an exact duplicate of the wonderful gem, placed it upon the table beside the latter. With a smile which the other did not see, Mr. Rosenbaum bent his head to examine the stones. He had recognized his man in the brief instant that their eyes had met, and now within his grasp lay, as he well knew from the description which he carried, 2 of the finest diamonds in the famous Mainwaring collection of jewels, stolen less than 6 months before. His triumph was almost complete. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson, who had overheard much of their conversation, was congratulating himself upon the near success of his own schemes, when the officiousness of a waiter overthrew the plans of all parties and produced the greatest confusion. Catching sight of the gentleman waiting in number 4, he ignored the cashier's instructions and entered the box to take his order. Mr. Johnson's reply, low and brief though it was, caught the quick ear of Mr. Rosenbaum, who muttered under his breath, "The hoodoo! Confound him!" At the same instant a draught lifted the curtain to number 3, revealing to the astonished Mannering a view of Mr. Johnson's profile in the opposite box. His own face grew white as the tablecloth before him, and he reached wildly for the diamond, but both gems were gone, and Rosenbaum confronted him with a most sinister expression. "My diamond!" he gasped. "The diamonds are safe," replied the other in a low tone, "and you," addressing Mannering by his true name, "the more quiet you are just now, the better." The elder man's face grew livid with rage and fear, and rising suddenly to his feet, his tall form towered far above Rosenbaum. "Wretch!" he hissed with an oath, "you have betrayed me, curse you!" And dealing the smaller man a blow which floored him, he rushed from the box. In an instant Rosenbaum staggered to his feet, and pausing only long enough to make sure of the safety of the jewels, rushed from the café, reaching the street just in time to see his man jump into a cab, which whirled swiftly and started down the street at breakneck speed. 2 cabmen, talking at a short distance, hurried to the scene, and calling one of them, Mr. Rosenbaum hastily took a second cab and started in pursuit of the first, but not before he caught a glimpse of Mr. Johnson making active preparations to follow them both. "Hang that fellow!" he muttered as he heard wheels behind him. "This is the 3rd time he has spoiled the game, but I've got the winning hand and he'll not beat me out of it." By this time the first cab, having turned a corner a short distance ahead, was out of sight, but Rosenbaum, convinced from the direction taken of its destination, and knowing a more direct route, shouted to the driver which streets to follow, and to come out upon the alley near 545 Jefferson Street. "The old fellow will think I've lost the trail when he finds he's not followed," he soliloquized, amid the joltings of the vehicle, "and maybe it'll throw the hoodoo off the track.